All right. We're kind of having a weird day up here. This handout I was going to show you, I cannot, it kind of disappeared, but that's okay. You know, things happen. So I sent out the handouts. If you didn't get that, they are in the resource library. Now we're going to be sending out manuals. They're in the process of doing that right now. Like I think last week is when we started. If you're a daycare center, you're going to get the daycare training manual. If you also have at-risk, go receive the at-risk as well. If you have, we're going to send out a CACFP crediting handbook to everybody. We're also going to send out an infant feeding handbook. So you're going to get stacks of manuals and booklets that are going to help you out this year. So we're sending you quite a bit of this stuff. Okay, I'm struggling to enable the sound. So sound is out again. No sound again. Let me turn up. Hold on. Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay, good, good, good. If I'll type it in the chat. This happens sometimes. Thank you for letting me know, because sometimes it's on my end. If you cannot hear. Okay, sometimes we have little issues with, you know, it's kind of crazy. I don't think our air conditioners are out here. So again, thank you for everybody typing in. I really appreciate that. So you're going to get a lot of information this year when we send that out to you. And again, this training, by attending this training, you will be, your application will get approved, but just make sure you're on the entire time, because we do check to see how long that you are here. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you get your manual on page 4, it has your consultants on there. That's where they're listed. You can reach out to them at any time. They are the ones that you're going to call for any technical assistance. So they're the ones that you contact if you have questions about a lot of stuff that we're going over today. In the office, the staff here is the ones that really handle your application and agreement, and we can answer some of your questions. We have no problem with that, but just the things like with the manual and things that we look at for your review, that is your consultant is the resource person to help you out with that. You can call them for any time for technical assistance, not just for hey, can you answer this question, but they can also come out and assist you. If you have any questions, be like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm doing my paperwork correctly. Do you mind coming out and looking at it? They can always do that. Now, I will tell you, if it's around the time that you're doing, like if you have to get a review, they can't just stop a review and be like, okay, let's do technical assist. I mean, if you are like, when they show up and they're like, okay, we're here to do a review, keep like, well, I just want technical assistance. They can't do that. They have to do the review at that point, but you can contact them at any time and say, hey, I need some help. Do you mind helping me out? Am I doing my paperwork correctly? Or any other questions that you have. Again, you can also call us at the State Department as well. We can answer your questions as well, or you can email us. On that consultant page, I like to let everybody know that the phone number on there is a cell phone. So if you want to text them your questions, if you want to maybe take pictures of stuff and send it to them, you can do so. When I was in the field, it was easier for me to text and to email than it also was to always call. So you can text if you want to. I know a lot of times we don't keep numbers in our phone, so you may just let them know who you're with, but you can always text them questions as well. It's great that they now have work cell phones, which they've had for several years. So integrity. This is nothing new. We've been doing unannounced reviews for several years. So again, we can come out at any time to do a review. We do try to review you between every 2 to 3 years, but if you were seriously deficient or SD, we may come back. We'll come back in the following year after that. And we'll talk about SD later, which is seriously deficient. So again, we come out every 2 to 3 years, and it just depends because we have a requirement of how many daycares we're required to review every year. We have to review 34%. So sometimes we're like, we're not coming out till year 3. but due to my number, I have to hit my 34%. We have to put some in there, or some of our consultants have very few daycare centers, so they do like 50% a year. So again, you can be reviewed every 2 to 3 years. But if you were seriously deficient or SD, say this year, then we will come out next year. Now, one thing that we did put in here, we always try to send out notification letters to let you know that you're up for review, but we send them out, or we send them out to some consultants send them out to everybody at the beginning of the year because they just don't know if they'll be out there or not. We put that notification letter in the training manual. So you can go to page 71 of your training manual. And if you want to be like, okay, if they come out this year to do a review, what are the things that they're going to be looking at? So we put that in the manual this year. And also just a reminder that your records are to be readily available at the institution at all times. When we come out to do a review, we look at the last month that you claimed. That's where we start out at. Sometimes we go back a little bit further, but that's where we start out at. So for you, when we come out to do a review, we are validating that claim. So you should have all of your records completely done before you submit a claim. So we have some that there's a lot of times that there'll be information or things that are not completely done when we come out to review, but before you submit a claim, you really should have all your paperwork complete for that month. Then you submit the claim, and that's the information that we look at. So we are coming up on it. Our federal fiscal year is October 1st. So we go from October 1st to September 30th, and that is child nutrition's fiscal year. So the application did come out September 1st. But again, it goes to September 30th. So what a good reminder is just like some of the things that you need to do with CACFP that you may not have done yet, like maybe you haven't completed all your training with your staff. Remember, you have until September 30th to complete that. And I will let you guys know, we understand with Zoom, we've been doing Zoom for over a year now, I think. I'm so confused. I'm so lost on time due to COVID. I know we've lost time, so I'm confused. We've been doing Zoom a long time. We understand, and even I was on a training with our department the other day, and I kept on getting kicked out. So you may get kicked out. Come back in. We're not going to ding you. We can see that you've been kicked out and that you tried getting back in, that you got back in. So we want you to be here the whole time, but we understand that there's going to be times that you may get knocked out and come back in, and that's okay. We do a percentage of time. We make sure you hear so much of the time, because sometimes it just happens between internet, between just random stuff, that you may get kicked out. Just try to get back in. And sometimes you may have to get back out and come back in if your sound is off. So I just wanted to let you know, we understand. We're very understanding with that, and we do pay attention to that when we're looking to make sure that you've been here and how long that you were on the training. Now, this website, this is the website that you go to fill out your application and agreement. This is also, we have access to USDA website from here. This is where you go to get access to the training calendar. So make sure that you are registered for any trainings, because we do not send out certificates anymore. It's all based on if you're registered in our training calendar. And you have until 9 o'clock tonight to register. It's one of the handouts that I was trying to show you earlier. It's the instructions on how to go register if you have not done that. And again, if not everybody needs credit, that's fine. But we do need people's name that did attend. And that's why sometimes we'll ask you to put the names in the chat. But if you have like 8 people with you and you only like 2 are really required to come to get your application, you can put all 8 names on there. You can put the 2, it's fine. We don't send out certificates, but we go by with what's in the registration, in the training calendar. And then when we pull our Zoom report, and that's what, and then we pull the names from the list. I also see people putting in numbers. We no longer do CECPD credits. We don't have an agreement with DHS, so we do not recognize CECPD anymore. We do not have a way to log in to give that credit. So we do not need CECPD numbers any longer for this training. Also, this is where you go to get access to claims. We also have the resource library, and the resource library is where we keep everything. We have everything out there. You can even imagine we have the slides and handouts, we have the training manuals, we have interactive forms that you can use. We keep all of our information out there. You do not have to have login access to have access to the resource library. A lot of the things on the left, you have to have login to go to, but on the resource library, anybody can go out here and pull up any of this information and look at it. So make sure, I would definitely keep this email address or this web address in your favorites. That way you can always go out there and get the information that you need. So the online application has come out. It came out September 1st. And again, we always make sure, even when it's not during the renewal time, if you make any changes after your application is approved, if you have any changes ever, make sure you go out there and update your application. This is what we go by. We go by whatever times you have listed in your application agreement, we go by that. Like when we come out to do reviews, if you maybe you have a new director, maybe you have a new contact person, because everything that we email goes to the contact person in the business maintenance page. Now, I think that's going to change. I think with the new application, there's a place for owner and there's a place for a contact. So we will email both of those. Right now, it was just the person in the CACFP contact. So make sure that that person really is your CACFP contact. We've had, in the past, I've had some people call and they'll be like, we're not getting these emails, and they'll go out there and look and say you're with a church. Like your daycare center is in a church. Well, it would have the pastor as the contact, but the pastor had nothing to do with the program. So make sure that that contact is somebody that will either forward emails or is the contact person for CACFP. If you are contracting for any services or any food, if you contract for any services, like if you say that someone's helping you with your paperwork, you have to write a contract and have it submitted to our office first before you can go out for bid. Also, if you have, if you contract for food, and when we talk about contract for food, it means like daily someone's bringing you food and you're scooping it out and serving it. We have to have a copy of that contract every year as well. Now, something else, just so you are aware, because we've kind of sometimes had issues with this, you're filling out your applications now. You have to if you want to get paid for October, you have to submit your application originally the first time you submit your application to our office by October 31st, 2021. If you do not submit your application, then you will need to then you will not get paid for that month. So if you submit it in November, then we can pay you for November. We can't backdate an application. Now, sometimes what happens with the application is there's things that we need. So we'll kind of kick it out and send it back to you. We know when you first submitted it, we honor that date. So we will pay you the date that you submit it to us. So right now you have a month and a half to get it to us. So that's okay. Just wanted to let you know that, because we've had some people that they'll submit it their first time in November, December, and they're like, well, I want to get paid for October. Well, we can't pay you when you did not have your application. We had no application on file for you in October. It was not even submitted. So just make sure that you do that. Yeah, so as soon as you fill out your application online, you can submit it at any time. So if you haven't done training yet, which I know you're all on here, but like you can submit your application now, but they just won't approve it until the training has been completed. So you can turn in your application at any time. Whenever you complete it, you can send it in to us. That's one thing why we use the training, the registration, the training calendar is because by doing what we're doing with the registration, that's why you have to be registered in the training calendar, is in about a week. It takes about 1 to 2 weeks because we are doing tons of trainings. And right now we have 200 people on this training. So it just takes a bit of time. We have to pull records from Zoom. We go to the training calendar. We don't send out certificates because what we do is we look that you were here, and then when you go down to the business maintenance page, and I'll show it to you, it will show that you attended this training. That way our staff knows and they're not asking for that information from you. So that's why we don't send out certificates, and I'll kind of show you that here in just a moment. So there are changes this year. There's quite a few changes. These are all, this is stuff that has always kind of need to be done, and stuff that we're working on towards with USDA. You must submit a budget, and which you do, and you submit that budget in your application and agreement every year. So the budget, if you have not done your application yet, the budget has changed. Now I will, so there's so many K names, Kathy and then Cassie. Cassie did a training on how to fill out the budget, and she sent that out to everybody when she announced that the application was open. If you do not see that email or did not get it, we did upload that. It's a 1 hour, it's a step-by-step of how to go through the budget. If you are multi-sided, it's the same as it's always been. But if you're single-sided, it's going to look like the multi-sided budget. So if you go in there and you're very confused about how to fill out the budget part, you can pull up, it's a YouTube link. We put it out. It's in the resource library. It's under 2 locations. It's under general forms and it's under financial. So there's 2 sections that you can find it under. So just so that you're aware that you can go out there if you need help with the budget. Also, Cassie does a training. It's called the CACFP application training. She does it twice a month. The next one is next Tuesday. She does it usually the first Tuesday of the month and the third Tuesday of the month. So the next one is next Tuesday. It's in the morning at 9 a.m. and she's going to be going over how to fill out the entire application. So you can like put the Zoom call on a phone or on a tablet, and then you can fill out your entire application at the same time. So that's another training that you can go to if you need help with your application. So we do have some required forms. So what you do is you fill out your application every year. And then once your application is approved, some of this stuff we have to have a form on before you can make any changes. So once your application is approved, if at any time you need to make changes to your meal service, like meal service times, or maybe like you upped your license capacity, you will need to fill out a meal service change form and send it to us in order to change your meal times. Now, when you're filling out your application, you don't have to send it to us. You can change it then. But if you need to make any changes during the year, then you need to fill out that form. And you can send it as many times as you need to. But again, if you change your meal times, we have to have track of it. And our system doesn't keep track of changes. So we have to make sure that we paid you correctly. If you are multi-sided, or if you're single-sided and want to add a site or remove a site, there's forms for that. If you have anybody new that needs login access, you have to fill out a certificate of authority for anybody to have login access. Now, do not let people use your username and login. Everybody needs their own access. You can set up access to where they can't change anything, but they can just log in. You can have it to where they just do the application. You can have it where they just have access to claims, but you cannot don't give people your login. It's for safety reasons, because someone can go in there and do certain things, and either you don't want people to mess things up on your end, or what happens is when someone uses your username and login, whatever they do, it looks like you did it. And we've had issues with this in the past. So just make sure you're not giving other people your certificate of authority or your username and password. Everybody can have their own username and password. So you can fill one of those out and send it to us, and we will get them set up with the username and login. One last thing to remind you of is it's called the OMES vendor form. We have been sending emails about this since May. This really is nothing to do with us. This is through OMES. This is required for payment. So some of you have already sent this in, and that is fine. Just make sure you get this form into OMES. they're changing our payment system as a state. So this, for anybody that we give money to, has to have this. And this is for your center or whoever gets the payment from us. This isn't, we don't need it for your employees. This is when we pay you, where does that money go to? This is the information they need. If you've already submitted this to OMES, don't worry about it. We don't need it, but just make sure it's only a link. And again, we can go back through your emails and find the link that we sent because they said they may change the form up. And if you have questions regarding this, you would contact OMES for this information. I think they had quite a few before we started doing the trainings, but just make sure that someone has sent this form into OMES because once it goes into effect, it will mess with your payment if you haven't had this done. Good question. Tribes are not required to do this, nor school districts, because they already have that information. They've already gotten it from some other way. So tribes don't need to do this, nor school districts, because they've already received that information. So we talked about the website earlier, and this is what it looks like when you go to that website. As you can see here, this is where you would go and log in to have access to the application and agreement. You have to, like if you had claims, you enter claims and you still have to log in. And to log in, you also have access to the resource or to the training calendar. So we had talked about the resource library. This is the resource library. Once you click on this, everybody has access. You do not have to have a login to have access to this. And as you can see here, we have updated it. So if you haven't been out here in a long time, we now have a lot of different sections. So it's a lot easier to find information. So again, we have like adult day, we have a training and workshops, we have training slides and handouts, we have at-risk, multi-sided, infants. We've broken it down to where it should be a lot easier to find information. Before it was harder to find information, but it is broken up to hopefully meet the needs that you need. So also when you log in, we talked about the business maintenance page. So this is again where you go, you scroll down just a little bit and it says contact information for CACFP. This is where you go to enter that information. Again, this email address is where all of our emails go. From what I'm understanding is they've added a section for owner and they're adding this section for contact. We'll now have multiple people we can contact. Unfortunately, right now, it's only been for just this person is where our emails were going. But now we're going to send it to 2 different people, which will be really nice because schools, we've been able to do this, but not with CACFP. Because especially if you're multi-sided, you may want all of your directors to get all the information. So I know they're changing this. I'm not for sure the exact, but I know that the emails will now go to more than one person. When you're on that same page and you scroll down even further on that business maintenance page, what you will see here is there's a couple of things. One that we have circled down here is it says assigned office staff and assigned field staff. So there's somebody assigned in our office to your application, and that is who that's in this office staff. So you can always contact them directly. So like with this center, Jennifer Pryor is who they would contact. You can send them contact about your DUNS. If you have questions about your application, you can email them. We do have an email address that goes to everybody, but it's kind of been really locked up. So it's really suggested that if you want to know at any time during the year, this person is always assigned to your application. You can always contact this person directly. The field staff is your consultant. This is the one that comes out to do your review every year, or I mean, when you're up for review. So again, if you were not aware of who it was, you can always go to the business maintenance page and scroll down, and this is who it is. The only time this will really change is if, say, anybody leaves or takes a different position, then we will update this information. And then I talked to you about the training. So when you go into the training calendar, and that's where you register, what happens is we take all the Zoom information, and then we make sure that once you registered, and then, so right now you can go out there today. I think it's working. We had a couple issues that it was broken, but you can go out to the business maintenance page today and it will show this training that you registered for it, the one that you're here today. But once we get the information pulled over, this will be check marked that you actually attended the training. So again, this will be found in the business maintenance page. I think what they're going to do is every year it's going to keep trainings in your application every year that you did, but this will be your full history of all the trainings that you've ever done with us. We're going to keep all of them. So right now it has the class name. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the person who attended. We see that on the back side, so we can pull that information up. So that way we do know who actually did attend, but it's going to say like right here, it's going to show that you did attend the training. Again, just give us 1 to 2 weeks because this is our really busy time for trainings. We're doing in-person and Zoom both at the same time. So what we would really like this to do eventually is you can click on this and it would print you out a certificate with your name on it. That's on our wish list, but it's going to take a little while to do so. So when you see that you've attended the training right here, it will pull up. So if you, in about a week or two, if you still don't see this checked, you may want to contact our office, because sometimes it happens where a name is spelled incorrectly or it's spelled differently in Zoom. So we don't know who it is, or maybe your last name changed. So sometimes that happens. It's okay. But again, you have until 9 o'clock tonight to go register in the training calendar if you have not done so. And that is one of the handouts that we gave you, is how to register. This is how we do every single training. It's not just for this one, it's for all of our trainings. This is how we do it. When you go in there to do your application and agreement, we just like to make note of this. On number 7 in the checklist, this is the state agency and institution agreement. This is what you're agreeing to be on our program. When, like the first one on here says, be financially viable, administratively capable, and have an internal control to ensure program accountability. This, right, that first section and stuff, this has been in here for probably 5 to 7 years. Now, sometimes we do update the contract, but it's about 21 pages. If you're not 100% sure what you signed up for on this program, I highly suggest you print it out and read this. A lot of you will just go down and hit next page and then just hit so where you can submit it. But I just want you to be aware, like, this is what you're agreeing to when you're being on the program. This is what you're stating that you will do to be on the program. Don't just always click through it. You may want to print it out and read what you're actually agreeing to participate in the CACFP program. We're going to go over the basic responsibilities. This is the stuff most like this is the training manual. This will be found on page 6 through 9. So if you see any blue boxes down here on a page, this is the page number we're referring to. So again, when we go through it, so in this new training manual, because of time constraints, we had one manual, we turned it into 3 manuals, and then we have a section. If you're multi-sided, we have a multi-sided section. So because we went to 1 manual to 3 different manuals with an extra section, we have no index. We had no time to put an index in, but we did make the table of contents a lot more thorough. So hopefully you can find things a lot easier. Again, if you go through your slides and when you get your training manual, if you're like, now where was this information at? We don't have page numbers on a lot of slides because of time constraints, but we do have where this, like, and we'll show you, we have the section, so you can go to that section when we're talking about stuff. So if you need to refer back after you get your manual, you can definitely do that. Let me type. I just kind of look at the chat periodically, but if you ever lose sound, and it's very plausible, sometimes, like I said, I was on a training with our office that I got kicked out several times, sometimes with the bigger crowds. And it's just been kind of weird up here. I don't know what's going on. I don't think our air is working up here. So my internet said something crazy a little bit ago. So I think there's just some crazy, it's just been kind of a weird week. Instead of being Friday the 13th, this Monday the 13th has kind of messed with the week. So I don't know what's kind of going on. Just another reminder that if you are audited from us, if we come out to do a review, that the state auditor will ask, so this is requested from the state auditor, this is not from us, but I will tell you that if we come out, we do have to have copies of everything that we looked at during the review. We have to have copies. So, which I know by, you can make copies and give us a copy of everything. You can scan everything to us, or our office can come out and help scan, or they can maybe, if you want us to, they'll take our stuff off site and come back to our office and scan it. If your consultant is close to Oklahoma City, they can come to our office and scan it or make copies of it. This is not something that we like doing. This is because of the state auditors. We get audited by USDA and we get audited by state auditors. So the state auditors want to see every single thing that we looked at when we come out to do a review. So and the thing with that is like with the reviews, like sometimes we used to be a little bit more lenient with the reviews in certain situations, but we can't anymore, because when we're doing a review and state auditors are looking at the paperwork that they submitted, we have to go by like what the paperwork shows. So just, I want you to be aware, we may need copies of everything. Your consultant will talk to you about this. A lot of you already are aware of this, but we just want you to be aware this is not from us, but it's from the state auditors, and we have to be in compliance with the state as well, not just the federal program, with the federal government. So we get it from all sides too. So we understand what you're going through. We really, really do. We have added a new section to the training manual this year. We have a section called financial management, and this starts on page 11. So anything that we talk about from here will be starting from page 11 on. So this is kind of how we're setting it up a little bit. You'll find the little blue box on some of the information, but again, when we talk about some of the slides, you'll see where it starts at, so you can go back to that section and find what you need. So we talk about VCA. So VCA really is not like a new thing, but it's something that we're having to look a lot more at. We got an ME, which is when we get reviewed from USDA, we got that this year. And they know there's, again, things, when we do things or when we change things, it's not because of us. It's because it's required from USDA, or it's because of the state auditors from state auditing. So I'm just letting you know that when we make changes or when we do things or when we have to go more into depth, it's not because we're like, hey, let's make this program harder. Let's make more work for everybody. It doesn't come from us. So one of the big things, and we've kind of been talking about VCA, is that you have to be viable, capable, and accountable to be on the program. That, what I showed you on the application and agreement, when we pulled up like the contract, your agreement with us, this was the first thing on there. That has always been the first thing on the contract, but this is something that we're having to look more in depth on. And what does it mean to be that you have to be financially viable, capable, and accountable? What it means is to be on our program, you have to be financially viable. You have to have financial management, and you have to have adequate financial resources to operate on a daily basis in case we cannot pay. In case we can't pay. It has happened where we've lagged pay. It's not from us, it's because we didn't get the funds from USDA. And it happens. I mean, you know, the federal fiscal year is October 1st. And you've heard a couple of times, my mom works for the federal government as well, where it's like, oh, Congress has to go in to sign something in order for us, because the money stops and then they have to go in and sign stuff to get more money. It can be crazy. So if we can't pay you, it should not have any impact. I mean, it's going to have a little impact. I understand that. But what we're saying is you should be able to pay your bills. You are not relying on our money. The purpose of this program, the whole reason that this program exists, because honestly, we allow for-profit daycares to be on here. They don't even allow for-profit school districts to apply for this, for any program. This is the only program that I'm aware of that for-profit entities can be on this program. So what that means is the purpose of this program is for you to feed more nutritious meals to your children, especially in those areas that are lower income. That is the purpose of the program, is we're giving you money to feed your kids more nutritious meals. You also have to be capable. It means you have to have administrative capability, you have to have adequate staffing, and you have to have the ability to manage operations. So you have to be capable of running the program and doing this program. You also have to be accountable. That means you have to have program oversight, training, monitoring. You have to have accountability over this program. When it comes to VCA, it will always be monitored. So it's something that we were working towards. And now, as long as you're on the program, we always have to check for VCA. Last year, what we did is our way of easing into it is if you were brand new or is if you are SD or seriously deficient, you had to fill out what we call a VCA document. It was 7 to 10 pages long. You have to send in information to us, documentation along with this document to be able to participate in the program. Now, the VCA is actually located in the application and agreement. There's one whole section. I think I've heard I was listening to the training, but I think it's like 20 to 25 questions that you have to answer, and it's now on your application and agreement. As long as you're on CACFP, we do have to monitor this from here on out. When we talk about financial viability, what does that mean? So I talked to you about how if there's any interruption in us paying, that you are not depending on our funds in order to pay your bills and stuff. So the definition, and this is a question in the review. This has been a question in the review for about 7 years, I think. So when we would ask for your profit loss. This is what we're talking about is financial viability. What it means is that, again, that you can run in the black without our funds. You do not need our funds to keep your doors open. Our funds are just helping provide more nutritious meals. And this is as a center as a whole. This is not just for CACFP, this is as a center as a whole. So we do look at this, that's why, and I'll talk about what documentation we're gonna ask for when we come out, which we've always asked for this. It's just, I wanna give clear communication of what exactly it is that we need, because everybody does something a little bit different. Now, I will state, we were talking about if you were SD or new, you still have to fill out the 7 to 10 page document and send in information with that. So not only do you have to fill it out in the application and agreement, but if you were SD or seriously deficient last year, or if anybody is new and coming onto the program, you have to fill out our 7 to 10 page form, which Cassie is revising it because a lot of it is out on the web. It is in the application. So she is revising it right now and she will send it to you. But you do have to fill that out and you have to send us back with documentation. Like we'll be asking for financials and stuff like that. So don't be surprised. Like if you were seriously deficient last year, you still have to fill out this VCA document. Or if you're brand new and filling out the application for the first time right now, you also will have to fill out that documentation and send it to us with supporting documentation. In the application agreement with VCA, you do not have to send us supporting documentation. We will be asking for things for next year, but I'm not talking about that today. We'll talk about that later on in the year. So if you want to come to training later on, like in January, February, and next year, we'll talk about information that we will need going forward, any documentation. But right now, it does not matter. If you're single-sided, your budget application is going to be the exact same as multi-sided. And there's reasons we're doing this. It's because it's required for the VCA aspect for USDA. So it doesn't matter if you're single-sided, it doesn't matter if you're multi-sided. This is a requirement to be onto our program. So we get this question a lot about information that we look at when we come out to do a review. These are the things that we can ask for, and these are the things that we need when we come out to do a review. Now, we understand when we're coming out to do a review that it's not going to be immediately available because it might be the owner that has it. It might be someone on your financial someone in your financial that has it. But we just want to let you know what we do look at. So that way, if we come out, you may have it someplace in a file, someplace else, but you are aware of what we need when we come out to do a review. When we come out to do a review, I talked about your center as a whole. We will look at a revenue and expenditure or anything that you have, and I'll go over more in depth of what that is because as a business owner or as a business or as a entity, as a nonprofit, whatever program you're on, you should have financials for your business or for your because I know we have more than just businesses on here, like a daycare, but if you're, say, with a tribe or you're with we have hospitals, we have military bases, we have people in military. This is something that whatever it is as a whole, we understand if you're a larger part of a bigger entity like a tribe, we'll look for your CACFP stuff, but I'm talking if you're just a for-profit or nonprofit, just a daycare center, we're going to look at everything as a whole. We also will look at bank statements or credit card statements. So any purchases that you make for CACFP, any labor payments that you make, we have to have receipts. We have to look at the bank statements to make sure to validate everything. So when we're looking at receipts from the grocery stores and stuff that you shop at, we have to validate that by using your credit card statements, bank statements, anything that you use for CACFP. And we're talking about anytime you transfer funds in, if you transfer funds into an account, if you deposit into an account, or if you're spending out of that account, we have the right to look at that account. We have to see what's happening with the funds that we are giving you. Now, I will tell you, if this is all new to you, we really highly suggest if you have a credit card that you use personally and you use for business, we would highly suggest that you have one just for CACFP. Even if it's a bank account, I would suggest you get a bank account just for CACFP. So we have the right to look at anything that we need to validate how you spent or how you used our funds. And again, we talked about VCA or when we looked at financial viability, we talk about financial viability. This is, again, your entire center. And I understand if you're a tribe, that is something small, you're part of this whole tribe. We're really only going to focus on CACFP in that case. Or if you're a hospital, we're not going to look at the hospital, we're going to look just at CACFP in this case. But these are reports that we do need when we talk about we need your financial viability. When we talk about financial viability, we need a year-to-date report. Some of you have what we call profit loss. If you do QuickBooks, we could use any report from that. If you have an accountant, we can look at anything from your accountant or any other documentation that you use to close out your books at the end of the fiscal year. That's what we need when we talk about looking at your entire center as a whole to make sure that you're financially viable. We also understand that we have a lot of people on here that are nonprofit. If you're nonprofit, we understand that you're not making a profit. You can't make a profit because you are nonprofit. But we do have to see, like, if you're part of a hospital or a tribe or military, or if you're part of a bigger program, you may be getting subsidized. And we do have to see, so you may show that you're $1,000 and like your centers, it's because you're getting subsidized from another program or another entity. We will need to see that information as well, just an overview of how you're getting subsidized. We have to make sure that you are just financially viable to be able to participate on our program. Because if you're not financially viable, it's automatically SD. So again, this has actually been in the application agreement for years and years and years and years, but it's something that we've had to work towards because it is a big overfeat of how do we do this? How do we look at this from here on out? So again, when we talk about financial viability, it makes sure your center as a whole is viable, that you don't need our money to keep your doors open. But when we talk about CAC, and I'll talk more about this too, then we look at another aspect of it as how you're spending our CACFP dollars. That's when we look at the bank statements where you purchase CACFP information. Anytime you deposit a CACFP check, where does that money go? And again, also if you have labor, if that is, we can have the right to look at that information as well. Because a lot of people are like, no, you don't need to look at my bank statements. If our CACFP dollars are being purchased, if you're purchasing items for CACFP or it's being deposited, we have to look at that information. We have to validate receipts. We have to validate labor payments with check stubs. So we do look at that information. Again, we understand you're not going to have it like in your monthly folder, but we do want you to be aware that we do need it. So you may start looking at, okay, this is where I can go to print this stuff out. You can even email it directly to, so like for instance, when we come out to do a review, the owner may have it or somebody else financially might have this information. You can, instead of keeping it at the center, you can always, when we come out to do a review, we understand it's not going to be available when we come out to do a review. Like at that moment with all your records, you want to keep that stuff more private. We completely understand that. But what you can do is you're like, okay, this is what I know I'm going to send them. You can have it as a PDF on your desktop, and you can email it to your consultant. So we just want you to start thinking about things that if you know you're up for review this year, you need to start thinking about, and we look at your last one. So if you do a profit loss, or you have an accountant and your accountant only looks at things like every quarter, we'll take the last thing that they have. So just as a reminder, we understand, just talk to your consultant if you do have some questions. If you are a for-profit center, if you're a for-profit organization, if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, then you will receive a program-specific audit every year that your organization is not being audited from us. So if you are an organization and say you have 5 centers, even though they're all single-sided centers, if they're under one, it's under one organization and you receive more than $750,000, we have a contract with somebody to come in and do a specific program-specific audit every year. We only have like 15 entities this even applies to in the whole state, but this is all federal funds. So this is federal funds from us. This is federal funds from the EBT contracting or swiping. If you get title funds, if you get commodities, if you have any grants. So just to be aware, if you are for profit, if you have any questions about this, you can email me or Cassie about this, and we can help answer some of those questions regarding this. Again, this only affects like 15 people in the state, but it's not based on per center, it's based on your organization. Okay. Now let's talk about eligibility. This will start on page 15 of your training manual. So this is a copy of the family size and income application. We're doing the same thing as we did last year. We kept the same one page. We got a lot of really good feedback on this. We did make a few changes to it. One, they were the changes that we had are because they were just a little bit of wrong information, or it's clarification in here. So it's the same application. This application is out now. It is in the training manual. The training manual is also in the resource library. You can print it out there, or we also have a packet, what we call the family size and income packet that you can print out and already give to your parents. Now, as a reminder, the only thing that you can put on the application at all is the child who is enrolled in your center's first and last name. That's the only thing that you can put on here. Now, we'll talk about later in case they're missing information, but right here, this is the only thing that you can do. The parent has to fill out the rest of this application. Some of the updates from last year is right here, it said this is to go to part 2. So this says if a child has SNAPTANF or FDPER or is a foster child, to complete this section right here, but then go to part 2. Well, part 2 is the income and you don't need income. So we did correct that. And now you go straight to part 3, where's the signature. So that has been corrected. Something else that has been added is their clarification right here. The wording on this was incorrect. It says name of other household members, including children, not listed above. There was a lot of confusion about this. It was the wording. We did correct that. So if you have a child that's not enrolled at your center, but they're in the household, they go here. It said before income only, and that's not the case. It's any household member is listed here, even if they don't have income, because we have the 0 income box. Another thing that we added is sometimes you may have someone in the household that has SNAP, TANF, and FDPER, but someone up here does not have it. You can add it to this column right here. This is all other income, or you can put SNAP, TANF, or FDPER. Because sometimes you may have a grandparent living there and they have SNAP, but nobody else in the house does, so they can list that here if needed. And one other change that we did, and it was a terminology, it said free, reduced, and paid is a school term. So we did update this to free, reduced, and not eligible. What happened was we got this from a different state, and some of the stuff that was worded on here was based on their state. because it said free meals, reduced meals, and paid meals. So it was very confusing, and that's not the terminology that we use. So we did correct that information. So we'll go through the application. Again, everything up here is, this is all the children enrolled. So the parent lists their birth dates, the normal meals that they eat, the normal times that they're in care. This is where you'll check mark if they're a foster child or not. And right here, in case there's SNAP or TANF, they can list that number here. This section right here is what are their normal days of care. Now, we understand that you may have some school age children that are enrolled and their normal times of care are, say, from 4 to 6. This does not have to be updated once, like, because we understand in summer, spring break, fall break, Christmas break, we understand they'll be there all day. This is just their normal hours in care during most of the school year. This section up here is the enrollment form, this top section. So you have to have this application returned to you because you have to have the enrollment form. Now, if you remember in previous years, we've had a lot of people on here that's been on here a long time. You used to have one enrollment form per child. Now we just need one application and this one enrollment form. So everything up here at the top, one per household. So if the parent only wants to fill this out, they can fill it out, but they still have to sign and date it. Even if they just fill out the enrollment form, it always needs to be signed and at least dated. Now, part 1 is the ethnic and racial. This is optional. A parent does not have to fill this out. I think many do not, but this is an option. They don't have to fill this out. And then down here in part 2 is income. So if anybody lists their income, like a parent or anybody that lives in the household, this is where they go to. I understand this is not a lot of spaces. So how it goes is you take this down here for everybody in the household that is not listed above. So maybe you have 3 kids up here and you have three people listed down here. Maybe you have 3 kids, mom, dad, grandma. And then you add these together to get your full household. So again, this is just the enrollment form. So everything, so we went from one enrollment form per child, and then we used to have an application that was front and back. So that was, you know, if you had 3 kids, 3 enrollment forms, and then 1 application, but the application was back and was 2 pages. So now how it's set up, all you need is this 1 page. Unless you have more names, you can put them on the back or add it to another application. But you have to have this application back because you do have to have the enrollment up here. You do not have to use a separate enrollment form. This is the enrollment form. And then down here, this is considered the application. Again, part of this is the application and then the application. We did several pages, made it to 1 front page only. And then again, signature. And then down here is what the institution does. And we're going to go through the application, but I wanted to kind of show you what the application looks like. But now let's go into it a little bit more in depth. Again, you cannot fill out the application and agreement for a parent. The application has to do it. So unless there's something you can't read, you can ask for clarification. But again, the only thing you can fill out is the child's name. Next is you must distribute this every single year and get them back. Now, before, if they didn't send in the application every year, that was okay, but you just put them on ineligible. But now, because the enrollment form and the application on the same page, you have to get this back every year, at least with the top section filled out. The application must be on the current year form. And another thing I forgot that was added to the application, and it will be added from here on out, is to help you know, we put the year. So this application is good from 2021 to 2022. And then again, a parent is not required to fill out part 2. They are required to fill out the top part, but they are not required to fill out part 2. That is the income section. They may not want to give you their income, and that's fine, but you still have to have it back. You still have to have the top part because that is the enrollment form. Again, the top section is required to be filled out per household and a signature. That is the enrollment form. But I have some Head Starts on here. So Head Starts, don't freak out quite yet. I have an option for you. So I just don't freak out quite yet, but this is for most daycare centers. This is what you will need. Again, the enrollment includes the dates, the names of kids, their dates of birth, their normal days of care, and the meals that they receive. Okay. So again, I know we have some Head Starts on here. Don't freak out quite yet, because you do not have to have the application. We do have a solution for this. So now let's go ahead and quickly talk about the application again, because Head Starts are not required to fill out the application. So again, don't freak out quite yet. Let's talk about SNAP and TANF. So SNAP and TANF, what you do on the application is the full name of the children have to be on there. And then there must be a case number someplace on the application. So again, just if there could be a SNAP, TANF, or FITPR number at the top for one of the kids, or it can be down in the second section. But if there's one SNAP, TANF number anywhere on the application, everybody on the application is eligible for free. Now, a SNAP and TANF number, it has to be one of these where it starts with A, B, C, D, H, J, or T, plus 6 or 9 digits. So if they maybe give you like their 16-digit number that's on their card, you need their actual case number. So you have to make sure you get the case number, and it starts with A, B, C, D, H, J, or T, and same with TANF. Now, what FITPR is, if you're not familiar, because we do have some tribes on here, so you know what that is. But FITPR is federal distribution, it's food distribution program on an Indian reservation. What that means is that means that they're receiving commodities from a tribe. So that's what that means. A lot of times we see a social security number on there, but a lot of tribes do things different. So again, FITPR is if someone is receiving commodities from a tribe. And this information can be found on page 16 of the manual. Again, one SNAP or TANF or FITPR number, I didn't put FITPR, but one number qualifies the entire household. So again, you have to have the children listed on there. Somewhere there has to be a SNAP, TANF, or FITPR number. And then the signature, an adult has to sign and date that application. If there is income on there, you can just disregard it. You don't have to look at that. And then they're all approved for free as long as there's one SNAP or TANF number on there. One thing that you cannot do is when people swipe in, you cannot go to that EBT machine and like, oh, they swipe in, I need to go write that number down. That's their case number. That's their SNAP or TANF number. That's not correct. When they swipe in, that means that they have daycare assistance. That's two different things. Swiping in, like the daycare assistance income guidelines are much different than USDA's guidelines to be on the program. So just because someone swipes in, don't go to that machine and be like, oh, that's their number. Oh, that's their number. No, that means they get daycare assistance. What SNAP is the old food stamps. That means they're receiving food stamps, or it's temporary assistance for needy families. That's TANF. And FITPR, again, is commodities. This is based on income or based on that they're getting food based on their income from other entities. Swiping in means that they're getting daycare assistance. And an example too is like, I have a friend that they did foster to adopt, and that child still gets benefits, childcare subsidy until the age of 6, but they do not qualify for any program. They just are lucky to get daycare assistance. And again, just because they get daycare assistance, their income guidelines are much different than ours. So what we may say someone is reduced, they may show that they get daycare subsidy at a certain amount. So they're two completely different things. Do not confuse. And just be, now their SNAP number, if they do receive SNAP, could be the same as their swipe for their child care subsidy, but don't assume because they swipe in that they're getting SNAP, TANF, or FITPR. That's not the case. That when they swipe in at your center, that means they're getting child care subsidy. That does not mean they get SNAP, TANF, or FITPR. Foster children. So when it comes to a foster child, that foster child can go on the application. So if you've been on for a long time, foster children used to go on a separate application, and then you put everybody else in the household on a different application. That's no longer the case. You put everybody on the same application, even if it's a foster child. There's a box that you mark for that child if they're a foster child. And just in case people ask you, foster child and guardianship are two different things. If someone says, well, I'm just this child's guardian, that's not meaning that they're foster. What foster means is that child is awarded to the state. They're getting subsidy. They're awarded to the state. They may give you a KK number. If someone puts down a KK number, that's a foster child. What a guardianship is say, let's just say something happens with my nieces and nephews, and I don't want them going into the system. I just take them. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take these kids for right now until this situation gets situated. I'm not going in through the state. So that's a guardianship. Again, foster is when they're awarded to the state, and the state has the custody of that. Technically, this custody of the child, even though you are watching them. But guardianship is not that case. So a foster child, if you put a foster child on an application, and that application is good for a year. So even if they're a foster child at the beginning of the year, and then the parent adopts them later, you can keep them foster that whole year. That application is good for 1 year. Or even if that child leaves, you can leave. You do not have to get a new application from the family. That application is good for 1 year. You can update the application if you need to, but it's not required. So what you do on an application, you put the foster child's name on that application. It gets marked as foster, and the family does not have to put what they get from foster care for that child. They do not have to list the family income they're getting from a foster child. Now, if a foster child is getting personal income, you can put that on there, but you do not have to put the family's foster payment that they receive from DHS on the application. So what you do is you put the child's name that they're foster with everything else that's needed for the enrollment form. And say the only child in the household is a foster child, you put the foster child name on there, and then the parent signs and dates it just like you would a SNAP or TANF. You don't have to put a KK number. You don't have to put all that. You just mark it as a foster. We know it's a foster. Now, if you do have a foster child and you do have other children in the household, that foster child is the only one that is free. All the other children is based on either income, SNAP, or TANF. So again, the foster child is free, but just because there's a foster child, not everybody is going to be free. You have to base the other children. Their eligibility is based on on household information. And income, this is part 2. So if you have a family that say there's nobody that has SNAP or TANF, they can fill out part 2, and that is all other household members' income. What they will do there is they list either if they don't have income, they will mark the no income box, or they will put their monthly gross, their gross income. Sorry, I have to take my morning pill. I apologize. Okay, you also have to have a signature of the adult. So again, you list anybody that has any income has to be listed in part 2. And it does need to be done monthly. It's a monthly income only for our application. So if you can tell in there, maybe they put $25,000, or like, you can call them and be like, did you mean, is that your annual salary? Because man, I'd love to get that per month. But say, I need what you make a month on here, and you can update that. And then you need someone in the adult, you need a household member signature, date, and their last 4 of their social, or there's a box that says no social if they do not have a social security number. The only time you're required to have the last 4 of the social or the box that says no social is if it is done by income. The application is done by income. So I hope that makes sense. It is not required for the family to fill out part 2. And I'll kind of talk about that in just a minute. But again, this new application, we tried to make it a lot easier that they only put their monthly income in there. So if you can tell that it doesn't look like it's their monthly income, you can definitely talk to them and be like, hey, this is by month. You can even highlight it monthly. And maybe I need to start doing that if it's a problem. If it's a problem that you see the way that they're filling it out, then I can definitely highlight it. So it'll always be highlighted on if you print it out. And then if a member of the household reports their income, again, other than monthly, you can contact them and have them say, I need your monthly income. Now, we do have some definitions that we don't go over, but it is in the manual. So if you have any questions, you can go here. If you still need help, you can definitely reach out to your consultant. So some of the people ask, like determining your household size, determining household income, any income exclusions, and military exceptions. So determining household size, an example of this is, say you have a child that's in college. Because they're at college, can you still put them on the application? Yes, you can, because they're still considered a member of the household, even though they're away at college. Determining household income, we kind of talked about this. One would be, if I'm a foster parent, do I have to put the income I get from DHS? And no, you do not. There's income exclusions, that's another exclusion. Or if you win the lottery and you take the one lump sum, then you don't have to, the next year, you don't have to put that on the income. And then there's military exceptions. There's certain exceptions that military does not have to put on the application agreement. Like I know one is Agent Orange pay. There's certain pays that they are not required that they have to do. Now, we have had some requests. We don't have a whole lot of this, but you may have a facility that you need your income to be in a different language. We do, if you go out to the resource library, it says application translation, I believe is what it says. I think it's under center forms or general forms. But if USDA has either, I think 32 or 64 different applications in different languages. Now, our application that I showed you, we got approved specifically from USDA to have that application. We only did it in English. But if you need an application in any other language, you can go out there and print that out. But it is like how we did it in the old previously, is they can list their income either weekly, every 2 weeks, twice a month, or monthly. If they do that, you will have to do a convert. So if someone has a weekly income and a monthly income, you have to convert it annually. And these are the conversions. If you need help with this, reach out to your consultant. They can definitely help out. If you do have any applications in other languages. Now, I will tell you one thing I get frustrated with the applications in other languages, if you're not familiar with that language, is there's no English version, I think, that is comparable, so you can see what they were typing out. There might be out there now. I need to suggest that to USDA, because as someone who may not read that language, how do you know what they're putting in there? Like, how do you know what this section is and this section is? So just a reminder, if you do need an application in a foreign language, those are available to you. Now, again, we talked about part 2 of the income. You have to have the enrollment form. You have to have that top section, but it is not required that a family fill out part 2. They may not want you to know. They may mark it out with an X. They may put in A. That just means they're not eligible. They don't want to give you their information. So if they leave it blank, then the part 2, or put an NA or an X, then that means they're not providing that information to you, and that application will go into the not eligible section. If anything is missing, not readable, questionable, or inconsistent, so an example we talked about, like if they put their 16-digit number on there and you need their case number, you can contact the house. You can say, hey, you gave me your 16-digit number on your card. I need the number that starts with a letter. You can call them, they can give it to you on the phone, you can write it on the application. If you do that, then you have to make sure that you put who you talked to, the date you talked to them, and your initials and what you did. And that's okay that you do that. The one thing you cannot do for a parent is sign it. You have to return it to them if they did not sign it. Maybe they put their income on there and they didn't give you the last 4 of their social. You can ask them, hey, can I get the last 4 of your social? Or can I, do you have a social? And I can write on your application for you, but just make a note of what you did because we can tell when it's a different handwriting, even though it's numbers, we can tell. We look at a lot of applications every year. So just make sure you can write notes on there. That's completely fine. And all the applications you approve based on face value, based on what the family gave you. Now, what if they do not report any income? Then again, maybe they have no income, and this happens. So they can either make sure they have to check mark the no income box or write 0 in there. That means it's a no income application. If they give you their last 4 of their social when they sign it, you can prove it as an income application. If they don't give you the last 4 of their social, then you cannot prove it. You can ask for it, but if it has zeros or the no income box checked, it is considered an income application, just that they're reporting no income. Now, if you feel somebody is intentionally misreporting their income, then you can do what we call verifying for cause. And I would have you reach out to your consultant if you want to do something like this. What we're saying here is they're saying that they have no income, but they come in, or say they have no income, and then they come in every day with their Sonic shirt, their Sonic hat, and you can tell they're going to work, but they're telling you they have no income. That is something that we call verifying for cause. Is like, this is a federal document. When they sign that application, it's a federal document. And it even says on here, when you sign this, you are stating that everything is true and above is correct. It's a federal document. That is lying on a federal document. So again, there's certain things you can do. We don't see this very often, but reach out to your consultant and they can talk to you about that. And then approval. So once they give you the application agreement back, we talked about that bottom section of the application. That bottom section is for the daycare center to fill out. An application is not approved until someone from the daycare signs and dates that and writes their information down. If I come out to do a review and you have kids on your free roster, you're reduced and you're not eligible, and I look at all your applications, say you have 50 of them, and none of the bottoms are signed or filled out by the daycare center, then all of those applications have to go on the not eligible, because an application is not approved until someone from the daycare signs and dates and fills out that bottom section. You decide who does that. We do not. You can have multiple people that do that. That's fine. You decide who does that, but that application is technically not approved until someone from that daycare fills out that bottom section. We got to our Head Starts. We have some Head Starts on here. So Head Starts, you do not have to use that form that I just talked about, because it's enrollment and it is application all rolled into one. You do not have to use that form. When we talk about Head Starts, we're referring to federally funded Head Start programs. All children enrolled in a federally funded Head Start are automatically free. So you do not have to do the application. So what we do have is the old enrollment form that we used to do. We still have that in there, and it now says Head Start enrollment form. You can use that instead. You do not have to use that other form. So you can still do, if you've been on Head Start for a long time with our program, you can still do that old form. It is in there. It says Head Start enrollment form. Again, it's called, I will state, because I know we have a lot of people on today, I used to have some daycare centers that were with, say, a hospital, and it was only for hospital staff, or maybe your military and all of your kids, none of them qualify for free, maybe just your foster kids. I tell you, you can use the federally funded, you could use the Head Start enrollment form only if you know that nobody at your center really qualifies, or like I used to have, again, some, not just military, but other government programs that they are on our program, and no one qualifies except for foster. You can give that application to just your foster kids, your foster families if you want, and you can use this federally, you can use the enrollment form for daycare centers for the Head Start. All I say is talk to your consultant and just say, hey, because like I said, I had a daycare center that had 150 kids, and they had 2 kids that qualified for free. Everybody else was not eligible. And they knew that, because again, say it's a hospital, and the only people that can go to this daycare work at the hospital. So you know everybody is above income. So I have no problem with you using that Head Start enrollment form since you don't have anybody that qualifies, but just talk to your consultant, make sure it's okay from them. I think a lot of them would say, yeah, because it's so hard to get that form back when it asks for income information, that you can go ahead and use the enrollment form that we have for Head Starts. Okay. Let's talk about the rosters. So once you approve an application and they're free, reduced, or not eligible, you put their names on that roster. And that is what you use to claim at the end of the month. As long as a child eats one meal that month, then you can mark that they participated in the program. And this is what you use to claim every month. So those that were on the free will be those that are federally funded Head Starts, and anybody that has an application on file and approved by either SNAP or TANF. If you are a federally funded Head Start program, we just need a form. We have a form in the book that you can use. We just need a list of the names of the kids enrolled in your Head Start program and their start date. And then there is a column for drop date in case any do drop. So you can just fill that out, and that if you fill that out and have someone from the Head Start sign it, that is kind of your application and agreement for everybody. So it's kind of nice. Your reduced kids, those are all by income. They will go on your reduced file. And then not eligible is the last one. And not eligible are those that their income is too high or that they do not want to give you their income information at all. They left it blank or put NA in there. Those are those that are not eligible. And remember, a parent must return the family size and income application to you because you have to have that enrollment form. The enrollment form is at the top. So again, the top section is the enrollment form. And as we mentioned before, all children that are enrolled at your center have to be on an enrollment, have to be on a roster, even if they don't participate in the program. What happens is we look at your attendance records and we pull your rosters to see who was in attendance that month and who was not. And you may have a child, and an example of that, they're not participating, is maybe you have a child that has severe food allergies and the parent's like, it's just a lot. I'm very cautious about what my child eats. I know what I buy them is correct. Don't feed my child. I will give you food for my child. That's an example. Or maybe you have an infant who has an infant meal waiver form and they're not participating on the program. But what happens is they're not eating the meal, so you're not claiming the meal, but they're still in your attendance records, and we're going to show that they're enrolled in your center. So what you do is you just put them on a roster. You can put them on the not eligible roster, and what you'll do is just put NP for not participating. Or if you have an infant that has an infant meal waiver form, which we'll talk about later, you can put an I in there until the child does start participating. It just shows that you're not claiming that meal, but yes, that child is going to show up in your attendance records. And again, the total number of free, reduced, and not eligible from the roster is what you put on your claim. Okay. It is 10:30. We're now at record keeping. Do you guys want to take a 5 to 10 minute break, or do you need to keep going until 11:30? We can take a 5-10 minute stretch break and go to 11:30. Okay. If I hear one, we'll take it. Let's take a 10-minute break. Let's come back at 10:40. 10:40. I'll put a little bit of music on. Let's just take a quick break. How about this? Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll take a 5-minute break. Let's come back at 10:35. Just give time, people. It's 10:32. We'll come back at 10:37. Quick 5-minute break. I have to run something to somebody anyway. Just stand up, stretch, go get water, and then we're gonna go. So let's come back at 10:37. If you have questions, we can take this time to answer questions. But quick 5-minute, 10:37, we'll come back. Okay, we got 1 minute, 1 minute. No questions. Okay. If you have any questions, let me see if I can find this form I was going to show you. Just close it. Oh, here it is. So earlier, for those that are on, we said it'd be 10:37. So this is one of the handouts that we gave you. Again, it shows you how to register online if you are not aware of how to do it. If it's your first time, again, you have until 9 o'clock tonight. This is one of your handouts. We even keep this. We've been doing this for a year. It's been great. And then something else that we have, so there's 2 ways. You can click on this YouTube link. It's a 1-minute YouTube link to tell you how to do it. Or these are literally the step-by-step instructions if you do not know how to get on there. Now, we are wanting to change it. We don't really like the training calendar, how it's set up. We'd like to make it like a calendar. There's a lot of things we'd like to make it do. So that's in the works. And then we talked about the training manual changes for 2022. Again, we have 3 separate training. So this is my book. Oh, I don't have my video on. Hold on, my video on to show you. So this is my book. I've always kind of had this big, thick thing. And if you can see in here how thick it is, this is 2 training manuals and the multi-sided sponsor section. So your training manual went from 400 pages to daycare side, it's at 250. And then the at-risk manual, I think is about maybe 175 pages, 200 pages. And then these are the additional items that we're putting in there. So everybody's getting the crediting handbook, which we'll go over later. Everybody's getting the USDA Feeding Infants Guidebook. And this is the crediting handbook everybody's getting. This is the Feeding Infants book that everybody's getting. If you have infants, like if you're a Head Start, or I mean, if a Head Start may not get this, you may, but this, I mean, they're really good books. We order these all from USDA. Get all my stuff. So, and then if you're on at-risk, you'll get the at-risk manual and the USDA at-risk guide. And then we have a sponsor section that's 35 pages. That's just for sponsors. So we took all that out and we are only giving you now what you actually need. We had a lot of people that would get really confused about things. So we thought this might be better in the long run to make it to where people are not pulling the wrong things. We also have an adult daycare. So I know we don't have any adults on here. We've already done their training for them. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Yes, you get everything I just told you. It's all being boxed up right now. So everything that I just told you, this manual, training manual, the actual training manual you always get every year, you'll get that. You'll also get, if you're a sponsor, you'll get the multi-sided section. You're getting everything. So you may get stacks of stuff. But the training manual is $250 versus $400. So it's much nicer. It's much smaller. It's only the stuff that you need. That's why we're doing things so differently, because people are getting confused by the programs. At risk is completely different than center. So we wanted to keep it separate. So we're doing that now. So, and it's just like when we were getting our manuals, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so small compared to what it used to be. So it's great. It's nice. Okay, let's talk about record keeping. So again, we talked about all records. You must keep everything. You do it every day. Keep it by month at each site for any institution participating in CACFP. Again, all your records must be at the site approved in your application. So just remember, because when we come out to do a review, we can look at even the stuff that you're like today. If I come out today, I can be like, hey, I need to look at your record. Let me look at how you do things for September. I can look at that. I can pull that. So make sure everything is up to date. Now, if we have some centers on here that do participate in at-risk, this is the only at-risk that we talk about is on this slide, unfortunately. But a lot of you, because you're doing a daycare, your at-risk program is just a bit of a smaller program. And of course, you don't have to keep as much information. If a center has regular meals and does at-risk, you have to keep 2 separate records. So just remember at the top, you can put at risk and you can put regular meals. You would check the appropriate box for which program that what you're using. Because again, if you're a daycare center and you do at risk, you have to have 2 separate sets of paperwork. You can only participate in at-risk during the school calendar year. So like if I'm in Oklahoma City area, and let's just say school started August 15th and school ends May 15th, that's the school calendar year. That means I can do the program first day of school, May 15th, and I can stop doing it. August 15th, and then May 15th, I have to stop. But you can serve it during spring break, summer break. Not summer break, spring break, Christmas break, fall break. But once school lets out for the year, then you can no longer serve at-risk meals. And at-risk meals, you have to have menu serve form and attendance records. And you also have to have an educational enrichment program. So if you're a daycare, that's what you do if you participate in the at-risk program. So record keeping. So I put on here the page number where you can go to in the manual. And again, if you want to, we're mailing out manuals. We're in the process of doing that right now. But also we have the PDF version online. So you can go out there into the resource library and just download the PDF version onto your desktop. And if you need anything, you can open it up. You can find stuff in there. If you hit find, you can type in. But if you want to go out there and look at it now, again, you don't have to print it out, but you can keep it. As a consultant, when we're in the field, a lot of us don't carry our manual anymore because we have so many manuals and they're so thick, but we keep them all online so we can always go out there and just download it and look at it at that point in time. So we do have, these are the pages of the forms. We have the daily attendance records. We have arrival and departure, which not everybody has to do. We do suggest, so we can, FYI, I'm going to tell you not to do extra work. If you need to keep arrival and departure times, one might be your consultant's requesting you do this for reasons because of the review. It might be required. Maybe you serve more than 3 meals per day, so they want you to keep it for that reason. But I would tell you just use your DHS time in, time out sheets. Don't do work twice. And just so people are aware, we're a state agency. All state agencies can look at other state agency items. So if I come out and say, hey, I need to look at your DHS time in, time out sheets, I can see those. I work for a state agency and I can look at DHS time in, time out sheets. I can look at another state agency item. If a DHS worker comes out and says, I want to see your menu serve forms, they can look at it because they're a state agency and they can look at other state agency items. It's within their wheelhouse. So just want you to be aware, if we ask for something, we are allowed to look at it because we are a state agency and we are allowed to look at other state agency things. And plus there are some things, if we come out and see certain things, we are required by law to contact DHS. So just because we're not DHS, doesn't mean that they can't contact us about that. We don't contact them about certain things. And just like DHS, we have DHS contact us and be like, hey, you need to go out to the center because of XYZ. So we can talk as well. We have a meal count worksheet on page 49 and 51. I'm going to talk to you more about the meal count worksheet. We do have some changes to some forms. That is one of them. And then we have the daily record of meals served form, which we also call the DROMs. And this is what I would highly suggest. I would suggest you do this. If you serve more than 3 meals per day, and because we have over 200 people on the call, I'm assuming we have several centers that you do serve more than 3 meals per day. You may serve more than 3 meals per day, but you can, per child, you can only claim 3 meals per day. So maybe you have breakfast, lunch, PM snack, and supper, and a child ate all 4 meals. You're only allowed to claim 3 meals per day. And they can only be 2 main meals and a snack. So you have to show us what meals those child ate and what meals you're claiming. And this is an example of the DROMS form. We also have this form available for those that just serve 3 meals. I have a lot of centers that like this and they only serve breakfast, lunch, and PM snack. We do have one out in interactive forms that you can use, and it does have just the 3. It's a very big document because it's a center that has like over 200 kids. So when you open it up, I was just in there the other day. When you open it up, you can have just one for your center, or there's like 10 or 17 tabs because this who I made it for had 17 rooms and they wanted 1 per room. So This is the example that we have here. So you can see here with Steffi Douglas, who's the first person, and let me kind of have some stuff that's kind of getting in the way. There we go. So you can see that Steffi Douglas on the 3rd and 5th and the 7th ate 4 meals that day, but they circled the ones that they're not claiming. And again, people don't realize this, but meals indicated as not being claimed need to be listed in your meal count worksheet. Now, this is a meal count worksheet. This is. The reason people like this form is because the DROMS form is also considered attendance and a meal count worksheet. It counts as 2 different things. But if you use the other meal count worksheet, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Now, this is a tip if you want to use this. And even for my centers that that have the 3 meals per day, that you don't have to take back meals because everybody can eat all the meals, but they like this form. The one for the 3 meals per day is it has a spot so you can do it by hand. Where over here, your teachers can count by hand how many kids they ate. But because this one is set up for those with more than 3 meals, this is my suggestion to you when you do this form. Give this form to your teachers. You can have our interactive one. What you can do is use our interactive one and type in all the kids' names. Okay, so type in their names and then give your teachers a blank form every month. Have your teachers just mark all the kids and every meal that they ate. At the end of the month, they give you that paper form and you can circle. I had some that highlighted these meals that they're not going to claim, but it does need to show what meals that child ate. What I would suggest you doing is you take our interactive form, because you already have the kids' names typed in, you saved it blank. And then at the end of the month, what you do in the electronic version is you only enter X's where the meals that the kid ate. I think I made that sound very confusing. The reason why is our DROMS form in the interactive, it will calculate for you. It will do the math for you. So you have the paper copy showing us all the meals that the child ate, but then in the actual one online for the meals you're going to claim, you're going to go ahead and so the teacher filled this one out. Let's just say it's handwritten, the teacher filled this one out. Then I'm going to go into the system and use my interactive form, and I'm only going to put these 3 meals, these 3 meals, and these 3 meals, these 3 meals, these 2 meals, these 3 meals. And then that way my program will just calculate the meals I'm going to claim, because it does get hard on the paper one of being like, okay, you don't count that one, count this one, don't count this one, don't count this one, count this one. It gets confusing. So use the paper, use the handwritten one. Hope I'm making some sense. Have your teachers just say, if a kid ate, mark him for the meal that they ate. And then you get it at the end of the month, and it's all done by hand with pen or pencil. And then when you do the electronic version, you only list the meals you're actually claiming, and then this will do all the calculating for you. So that way you don't have to do this by hand. And it's harder to back it out. Like so if you put an X here and circled it in the computer version, it's going to count this meal in this total, and we don't want it to count. So that's why you may have this on paper so you can show us what they did eat, but then you have the electronic version of the ones that you're actually claiming. I hope that makes sense. So this is a really good form. Love it. Great form. But again, I know it can be very confusing. Something else that we get I get very irritated. I'm going to be honest, I get irritated with it. It drives me crazy all the time. You have to show us what meals those kids were there. They have to show that they ate a meal, even though you're not claiming it. There's several reasons for this. And like we said here, if they're not being claimed, you still have to put them on the meal count worksheet under non-claimable meals. And the reason why is because, okay, let's just say, let's use the number 9 in this example. Here, okay, let's do this. You have 20 kids that showed up for breakfast, 20 kids. And you are only going to claim 9 of those kids because all the rest of them are there for supper. So you're going to claim the ones that are not there for supper for breakfast, lunch, and PM snack. And the ones that are there for breakfast, lunch, PM snack, and supper, you're not going to claim breakfast. So the deal is you can only claim 3 meals per day, but that child still ate a reimbursable meal at breakfast. So if you had 20 kids there for breakfast, you still have to put 20 kids on your production record or your menu assert form. And we still have to show that 20 kids were there in attendance, even though you're only claiming 9 because you're claiming them at supper. Okay, I see a couple questions I'm going to kind of chime in on just a little bit. If you've never heard of this, how many meals per day are you claiming? Are you claiming only 3 meals per day, breakfast, lunch, PM, snack? Then that's maybe why you've never heard of this. But if you're serving more than 3 meals per day, then you need to be doing this form. And you have to list every meal the child ate, even though you may not be claiming it. A child can be there. Let's say I have had a center that they have breakfast, lunch, PM snack, supper, and late snack. But a child, you can only claim 1 child for 3 meals per day, even though they were there the entire day and had, say, 5 meals, you can only claim 3 meals. That child, you still have to show was there, that they ate, but you didn't claim the meal. If that child was there and they ate a reimbursable meal, then that meal needs to show up on the menu assert form. If you have 20 kids that ate breakfast, a reimbursable breakfast, there better be 20 kids on the menu assert form and 20 kids on this form, even though you're only claiming 9 because you're claiming the other 11 at supper and not breakfast. Does that make sense? Because what happens a lot of times is we see, oh, well, they were there, but we just didn't put them on this because we're going to claim them at supper. Well, what if they left early that day? And you didn't mark them down for breakfast, but they left early. So how did you know? How did you go back in and put them for breakfast, even though they were already there? If they ate, they need to be on this form. Don't leave them off just because you're like, oh, well, I'm claiming them for supper. Yes, everybody eats. And then that number needs to match your menu assert form. So just because you didn't claim the meal, that child still ate. And I've seen it a lot too, where they're like 20 kids ate breakfast. You're only claiming 9 because the other 11 had supper that day and you're claiming them at supper instead of breakfast. But what they'll do is they'll put 9 on the menu assert form. But you fed 20 kids. There needs to be 20 kids on the menu assert form. No, you're fine. You're fine. Oh, you didn't know that you could claim breakfast for those that are not. Yes. As long, but talk to your consultant because make sure you're doing all the correct paperwork. So yes. So I hope that makes sense. This is the biggest thing that I always saw in the field. It always drove me crazy because if you have 20 kids at 8, you fed 20 kids. So 20 kids need to be on your menu assert form. And again, on the other meal count, so like with this, in this instance as well, if you had 20 kids that ate breakfast, but 9 of it, you're only claiming 9, so that meant 11 kids. You know, anyway, you would put them on the 11 on the non-claimable because you're not claiming those meals, but those kids ate a meal. So it's a little crazy. Okay, so we do have a new meal count worksheet. Now the DROMS form is the same. That's not changing. We do have a new meal count worksheet. It looks the exact same, except it's not on landscape. It's on portrait now. We split it up. It has ages 1 through 12, and then we have infants. A lot of people kept on forgetting to put their infants on here. And another thing is because we needed room to do something and we didn't have any room. It was tight. So we do have 2 menu assert forms. Like this one right here is from 1 to 2-year-old. These are your school age kids or your children over age 1. And then we have one that says infant. And it will say 1 through, it probably should say 1 through 11 months old. So we have 2 now because a lot of people did stop. They would forget to put their infants on, so we just put them on a separate one. The instructions are on page 48 when we talked about those unclaimable, and this is that section where it says non-claimable meals, as if you use this menu worksheet, this meal count worksheet. I apologize, getting a little tongue-tied. So these is all the meals that you do claim, and these are anything non-claimable. And an example of non-claimable are any kids that are not participating, and maybe they're eating, but they're not participating. Or again, those ones that if there are, it's the breakfast. So as you can see here, the kids that they are not claiming, they put right here because they already had their 3 meals per day to claim. So now let's talk about the food purchasing form. So the food purchasing form is required when you have a receipt that is not itemized. And a lot of times that when you go to Walmart, Crest, Reese's, Homeland, Brahms, those paper receipts, those are not itemized. So in that case, that's when you have to use this food purchasing form. And I'll show you an example of that. So this is an example of the food purchasing form. This may look familiar to all of you. You list everything on that receipt for that, whatever's on that receipt. Sometimes, like if you buy a lot of stuff from Walmart that day, you may have to have multiple forms. This is also in our interactive forms. And we keep all of our interactive forms. If you go to Resource Library, go to the very bottom, it says worksheets. And in these worksheets is all of our interactive forms. And it's great because it does the math for you. Now, one thing I want to say is in this column right here, the reason for this is because it's not itemized, so you're itemizing it right here. So you're telling us how many you purchased, what was the unit size, because that's usually not on those receipts, is what the size was. And then this is what you bought. Now, an example I have of this needs to be what you actually purchased, not just what the receipt says. So an example is I was doing a summer feeding and the receipt, it said HP 365X. And they put that on here. And I'm like, well, what is that? And she's like, I don't know. So I'm like, well, you need to either find out or I have to mark it off of here because I don't know what that is. And you don't know what that is. What it ended up was she called Walmart and she bought ink. So you can claim ink, which should have been over here in not edible food related supplies, but you put ink and then put like dash, HP 365X. If you, because there's some, I know Leanne's on here, I believe, there's some things that they've seen on receipts and we don't know what that is, but it'd be like Fritos, or it'd be like, I saw one that said like GVS grape. Well, it was great value grape juice. So you can put like what it says on the receipt, but we need to know what it is. So if we don't know what it is, put like a, GVS grape and put / grape juice. So we know what that is. Because if you're going to come back and you're gonna be like, I don't know what this is. And you may even look when you leave the store, because a lot of times you may not do these right away. When you leave the store, look at your receipt and be like, if there's something on here, like, I don't know what this is, go through your stuff and be like, okay, this is what it is, and make a note on your receipt of what it is. Now, also, you do one of these per receipt, and you always have to have a copy of the original receipt attached. Now, we understand these receipts that they might fade, but you can make a copy, but we still have to have a copy of the original receipt. Now, I would say you have to use the new sheet, Lindsay, the new meal count worksheet, and I'll show you why here in a moment. Unless you can put this on here someplace, and if not, talk to your consultant, because there's another thing about forms is you can talk to your consultant about what forms you are using. So any form that you do want to use that we don't have, and there's a slide about it, contact your consultant. And I'll show you again here in a little bit of why I'm saying why we use the new form versus the old, why we split it up. There's a couple of reasons why we split it up. So the food purchasing form, there are certain times that you are not required to use that food purchasing form. One is it's not required if you're using like a vendor like Cisco, Benny Keith, US Foods, Tankersley, Mid-America. It's because their receipts or their invoices are so detailed. It tells you that you bought 5 cases of whole milk and there's 4 whole milks in a case. Or it will tell you, another thing that you can do is if you do grocery pickup or grocery delivery, if you use those are so detailed. They have a picture on there. It'll say that you bought 5 Cheerios in a 32-ounce box. They're very detailed. Yes, you can use the Instacart receipts. Again, just make sure that they're very detailed, and they are, and they usually have a picture with it because they tell you the how many you bought, the size, the weight. As long as they're that detailed, you don't have to do the food purchasing form. The only thing that we do ask that you do on those forms is you still have to split it up between food and milk, CACFP related supplies, or anything that's not reimbursable. So if it's something like, say you bought pop, you can just mark it off your receipt. And then maybe you have foil and you have paper plates on there, but then you also have milk. You need to tell us how much is food and milk. Just you at the bottom of the receipt, be like, okay, $35.25 was for food and milk. And then non-CACFP or CACFP related was $10.25. Because you still have to break it out on your expenditure worksheet. But yes, if you do use anything, any grocery pickups, grocery delivery, anything that's super detailed. Now we do understand that, like with Sam's, if you do some of Sam's, I think if you use your phone where you scan it through, that it doesn't show the barcode at the bottom, but that's why we use your bank statements to validate any of these receipts that we're looking at. Now just to go over this, and this is now in the training manual, it's on page 52, because people get confused about what we can and cannot accept when it comes to receipts. Now, again, a copy of the original receipt or invoice must be attached, even if you make a copy of the receipt. Now, it's a little bit different if it's like I said, if it's Instacart or if it's Walmart grocery pickup. I don't know if you know this now, but I saw that Brahms now does grocery pickup. I guess you can use their app and do grocery pickup. There's a lot of places that do grocery pickup now. And I had a center that did that solely because they were really bad with their receipts. They kept on losing them. But when I'm talking about original receipt or those paper receipts that you attach to your food purchasing form, we have to have a copy, the original of that. Even if it's kind of fading, you can make a copy of it, but we still have to have the original. Any receipt that has been altered is only a copy. The original is nowhere near it, or is cut off at the bottom, it will be disallowed. If there are any receipts or invoices that don't have a date on it, like we have to know when it was purchased, because maybe we're in September, and say I look at August records, but this receipt could have been from April. I don't know. If there's no date on the receipt, I don't know when it was actually purchased. And then a receipt, for if you use grocery pickup or grocery deliver, it has to be the final receipt. If you use the receipt from when it was processed, or if it's still in process, we can't accept that. I have my groceries delivered. I am legally blind. I can't drive. And there's lots of times I'll order stuff and then they substitute it on me, or it's not available. So we cannot use the receipt from when it's in process or submitted. We have to have the final receipt from when you picked it up. Donated, and this is not new, this was last year as well, but we cannot accept any donated food or milk. So if somebody donates anything to you, you cannot use it as part of the reimbursable meal. It can only be an extra. Because we've been seeing a lot of issues with the program as people were getting a lot of stuff donated and they were not spending the money that we give you. And I'm going to talk about that here in a moment. The purpose of this program is you have to spend the money that we give you on food and milk or anything for CACFP. And if you're not spending that money, that's an issue. So we just don't accept donated products anymore. They can donate to you. So I had a church that this great, sweet little man always loved to bring chips to his kiddos, and he would still buy the chips. You just can't use it as part of the reimbursable meal. It's just an extra. Okay, the expenditure worksheet. So at the end of the month, you will do what we call an expenditure worksheet. You take all of your receipts and you take all of your food purchasing forms and you put them on the expenditure worksheet. And I'm going to explain to you the significance. I'm hoping by talking about some of this stuff, it makes it more clear of why, like the financial viability stuff, we have to make sure you're in for-profit. It means we have to make sure that you are financially viable to be on the program. Remember that. This is the other aspect of it. So you'll put your expenditure reimbursement worksheet. So this is when you take, again, receipts at the end of the month. This is what you're showing during the month that you spent on CACFP. So you can put labor on there. So any labor that you use for CACFP, when we talk about operating labor, that is your food service labor. Food service labor is your cook, Your food service labor is any teachers that help serve. That is food service labor. When we talk about administrative labor is maybe like the director who puts all the paperwork together at the end of the month. They're the ones who fill out the expenditure worksheet. They're the ones that probably do your application and agreement online. They're the ones that submit the claim. That is administrative. So in the budget, you cannot charge anything off the CACFP unless it's in the budget. And I'm going to explain what this stuff means here in a moment. I'm using some terminology I'm going to explain to you in a while. But if you are saying on your expenditure worksheet that you do, the cook works 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you can charge that off to CACFP because that's all she's doing is CACFP. If you have teachers that help, maybe they're helping you an hour and a half a day help serve. So you can charge off an hour and a half of their labor because they are helping with the program. If you want to state that information, like, yeah, I need to charge off my my cook's salary, that has to be in your budget and it has to be approved by our office. If we come out to do a review and you put nothing in the budget regarding labor, you can't charge it off. It has to be approved from our office. When we also come out to look at labor, we also have to verify it based on pay stubs. So one thing is when it comes to labor is, say you have a cook you have a brand new cook and they're I'm making up numbers. I know it's not minimum wage. I'm just making stuff up. I make stuff up as examples. But say you have a teacher or a cook, a new cook, and you're starting them at $8 an hour. But if they're there within 6 months, you're going to give them $10 an hour. And if they're there, you're going to give them $12 an hour. What I would do is in the budget, state that you're paying them the $12 an hour, because that way you don't have to go in and change your budget again. You can put more in your budget than what you're claiming, but it has to be reasonable. So if there's some things we have questions on, we're just going to ask you questions about it. But if you're saying you're starting them out at $8 an hour, but they could make $12 an hour, just go ahead and put $12 an hour is what you're paying them, because you might give them raises and you don't have to go in and redo your budget. And your budget is a big one. If your budget is projected what you're going to be doing that year, and you may have to go in and change your budget, and that's okay. A lot of people are going to have to. And going in the near future, you guys are going to have to really look at your budget and make sure that it is it's doing what you say that you're doing. Because I've helped approve applications and people will be like, I'm like, your budget is off. And they're like, oh yeah, that's been my budget since 2016. I haven't changed anything. You really have to keep up with what you're doing in your budget. It's going to be very important in the years to come. We do verify any labor by paycheck stubs. You cannot use cash at all to pay your labor. We can't accept any labor paid with cash, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. None of that is allowed. It has to be a pay stub. Now, it has to be, again, in the budget, and it has to be approved in the budget, but it has to be what they're actually making. And the reason I say that is I was at a daycare center and they were charging off $1,000 a month for the cook, which is very reasonable salary. So I asked to see their pay stubs. And when I got the pay stub, what it showed was this person made $1,200 a year. They were mostly a volunteer. You cannot charge off something more than they're actually getting in a paycheck. If you're a director or an owner and you are working for free right now, you do not give yourself a paycheck. You cannot say that you're giving yourself a paycheck in the budget in the application if you're not paying yourself. I hope that makes sense. I'm not going to explain it right now about why, but some of this is making, like, for instance, your salary. Maybe salaries change. It's going to make more sense the next coming years, but you need to keep your budget up to date. It's what you're expected to do. Your budget's a big thing. Again, I'll talk about that in January. I'll start trainings in January about what's going to be coming. And no, it's okay if it doesn't match, because the deal is you can pay them more. So the deal is you can't say that. In my example, is they were saying that they were giving them $1,000 a month on their expenditure worksheets. And when I looked at their pay stubs, they were paying them $100 a month, not $1,000 a month. You can't charge off more than what's in your budget. But what you can do is say, okay, I may give this person a raise. I'm going to put $12 an hour, but right now I'm only paying them $8 an hour. It's okay if it's less than what you're paying them what's in your budget. It just can't be more than what's in your budget. So that's kind of how that works. Because you can give raises and people do give raises. And that way you don't have to go in your budget and change it every time you make a change or you give somebody a raise. Now, in the new budget part, I will go ahead and tell you this too. Go watch Cassie's thing is you have to list people by name in your new budget. And so that way we go in there and look at the person's name and see what they're doing. It's not no more just a total number. You have to put the person's name in there. Now, on the expenditure worksheet, I'm going to show you what that is. Every month, it's everything that's allowable for CACFP. You put your food purchases on here, your non-food CACFP purchases, and your labor. If you don't know what's allowable or what's not allowable, we have some examples on page 92 of the training manual. This is an example of the expenditure worksheet. So you can see here, you list everything for the month. This is for the month of October. This is all their salaries, and you may need more than one page. We even have, this interactive forms, and I believe there's one just for labor, if you want to use one just for labor. So on the interactive forms, they used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They had 5 receipts for that month. And again, you have to break it up by food and milk, your non-food purchases, and then anything else. Income is not DHS income. What income is say you have a Thanksgiving dinner and you allow your parents to come and you're charging your parents for that meal. That's what that is. Yes, if your staff quits, you have to go in and update your budget. You can leave them in. I would actually leave them in there for that year, but you have to add anybody new that you have, because if I come out to do a review and say, Susie Smith, you paid Susie Smith, I need to see that Susie Smith was in your budget. But you may have hired with somebody else. So yes, that's what we're saying. Your budget, you're going to have to keep up with your budget. And then down here is your labor. And you may want to talk, well, I've had some questions about this. You may want to talk to your consultant, but the reason the cook Frida is on here twice is because she got paid twice that month. This is per pay stub. So again, they got paid on the 10th and they got paid on the 28th. That's why they're listed here twice. What this is saying at Frida Fryer, who is the cook, this is the salaries that they're charging off, and they're saying that she worked 7 hours this pay period, that day times $8 an hour, and she worked 7 days that pay period. And so that's why they're charging off for CACFP admin labor. This is who's doing like the application, putting the claim together. They're charging, that's admin. This is those that help with the food, including the cook. And then this is how much they spent on food. This is how much it was on non-food purchases. And see, right, you guys don't get commodities on anymore, but again, they were charging their adults because they had to say a meal, and they were charging parents that wanted to come eat non-program. These were parents that came in and say ate Thanksgiving dinner. So they charged the parents $3.88. And so this was the income they got from that. That's what that means. And then, so what this down here tells us is it says right here that that this total right here minus the income, that they spent $2,737.40 on CACFP for the month of October. That's what this means. What the second one is that's how much they got in reimbursement from CACFP. So what that means is they spent over $1,881.14. Every month, you need to be spending more on our program than what we give you in reimbursement. If employees eat, that's called a program meal, and that can be you can absorb that cost in your food cost, but that does need to be on your menu as served forms to show that you had adults that ate, because we consider that with the meals, with how much food that you served. So when we talk about allowable expenses, all expenses that you charge off to CACFP, it must be in your budget and in the budget section online and approved by our office. Now, if you're buying things that are for your whole daycare center, but you use it for CACFP and for the daycare center, you have to prorate that cost. A good example of that is paper towels. Maybe you're buying paper towels for the entire daycare, but you use 50% of the day of the paper towels in the kitchen and 50% in the bathroom. You can't charge it all off to CACFP if you're using it for the whole center. You can only charge off what you use for CACFP. Again, only items or services solely used for CACFP purposes can be charged off. If you have multiple daycare centers, and I'm not talking about if you're multi-sited, so you have one agreement number and you have 5 daycares underneath you, that's different. I'm talking about if you're an owner and you have 5 different daycares and they each have their own agreement number, then you have to keep receipts for each site. You cannot share receipts with each site. Each site has to have their own receipt, and each site, even if you are multi-sited, each site has to have their own expenditure worksheet. We have to see what's going on at each separate site. So why was I telling you, why is that important? So at the very beginning, I talked about what we call financial viability. You as a center is viable as a whole to be on our program to participate, and you do not need our funds to operate. Our funds are to help provide more nutritious meals to kids that may not have access to it. Another part of the review that we have, so we have a question on the review that says if you're financially viable. The reason people don't understand why you do these forms, I'm explaining that right now. The reason you have to do those forms is because you are required to be what we call a nonprofit food service account for CACFP. What does that mean? What that means is the money that we gave you, you have to spend all the money that we gave you on our program or more. You cannot make money on the federal government. So that's what the expenditure worksheet does. It shows us everything that you're spending your money on for CACFP. So if we give you $1,000 in reimbursement, you should be spending that or more a month in food, in labor, anything for CACFP that's related. That's the purpose of that form. Now, we do understand that at some point in time that you may spend, say, $800 a month, and we give you $1,000 a month. That happens sometimes. You don't spend it all. It's because of the month. But what we will do is if we come out in September and we're looking at August records and you spent $800 that month, but we gave you $1,000 a month that month in reimbursement, you can do what we call a 3-month operating balance, meaning you can have a little bit of money left over just in case to get you through the next month. But what we will do is we will ask to see your expenditure revenue report back until October. So if you are not for profit, if you are a for-profit, meaning you spent $800, but we give you $1,000, that caused you to be a for-profit in CACFP, then we're going to go back and look at these worksheets back into October to make sure that you are, as a whole, spending more money than what we're giving you. You cannot make money on this program. This is a federal program. It's federal government dollars. So if you are spending $5,000 a month and we give you $10,000 a month, you need to be spending more money. And you can do that by serving more nutritious meals. You can pay your staff more. There's things that you can do, but you cannot make money on the program. You have to spend all the money that we give you back into this program. That's what it's for. So I hope that makes sense. A lot of people didn't realize that's why we look at this. But the reason we look to see what you're spending in CACFP, and that's why we can go back and validate everything with bank statements and credit card statements, is because we have to make sure that you're spending the money that we gave you on appropriate CACFP items. So, and also I'm going to add to that too. I helped with the training, in-person training, which I love and miss doing those. We are going to be able to do in-person soon. We thought we might be able to, but we've been told, no, we cannot have people here again, any visitors. So we won't be doing any in-person soon. It will probably be, I'm going to assume next year. We'd like to go back to doing in-person as well. We're going to always do Zoom. Zoom will always have. But some people, they were telling us that because it's hard to find paper products right now. Some lady bought plates to use for CACFP. She bought plates, even though she's going to be using them for the whole year, for 5 years. If you buy plates For CACFP, put them on your CACFP expenditure worksheet. Like I said, if you in 1 month didn't spend enough, we'll go back and see that you bought $200 worth of plates. Say you have a toaster that goes out, maybe your microwave goes out, you can charge that off to CACFP. Maybe you're at a church and the microwave goes out and you use the microwave, but the church uses it and so does the CACFP. Then you have to prorate it. So say that a microwave was $300, you can say $150 we paid for out of CACFP and $150 that the church paid for. So if you have big items in bulk that you do need to buy, and that we talked about that again at this in-person training, maybe your freezer goes out, so you have to go buy a freezer. You can charge that off to CACFP, but you have to also make sure you go back into your budget and put that in there, because you can't charge off more than what's in your budget. So you're going to have to, yes, absolutely. You can charge all of that stuff off. A refrigerator repair. Again, just make sure you prorate it if you're with another entity. If anybody else, and I know we have a lot of daycares on here, but we do have some that, like, you might be in a church or you might be at a hospital, and you know what I mean, like it housed with somebody else and 2 people use it. If multiple people use it, then you have to prorate it. But if it's just for CACFP, I mean, it's just for your daycare and it's only used for CACFP, then yes, you can put that on your expenditure worksheet because you use it. It's a CACFP expense. And again, you don't intend for these things to happen. They just happen, but you have to go back and it's just a working thing. Like, you're going to be working towards this. So if a consultant comes out and was like, well, this isn't in your budget, they're going to tell you like, okay, we see that you bought a fridge or that you had a repair, but it's not in your budget. Can you go in and update your budget? Because it needs to be in there. They're going to work with you. We're trying to get you to start thinking about this. So it's not going to be like, oh, well, you're written up, it's not in your budget. It's one of those that they'll be like, oh, it's not in there. Can you please put it in there? So that way we can, to get you in the mindset of going back into your budget and updating that, because everything from here on forward is based on your budget. Of things that we look at, things that we're going to need from you in the future, we have to go look at your budget and it will make sense eventually. But you should have always been doing this, but we're really now paying a lot more attention to the financials and what really does need to be done. So we get this question asked a lot about errors, like what would cause us to take back money? And here are just some of the things that would cause us to take back money is if we show up and you have no records. If you have any errors with your family size and income application, maybe they were approved for free, but they should have been reduced. A lot of times if that happens, you put them on the free roster, so they should have been on the reduced roster. If you're claiming more kids than you actually have in attendance, if your meal counts are not properly maintained, or if you have incorrect numbers, and sometimes it happens. I mean, especially if you're even using our interactive forms, maybe you accidentally put an extra 0. I mean, some things happen. If you have any records or documentation that doesn't support the claim, and that's, again, that's why we come out, we're validating that claim. Another thing is if you have any food items that you indicated as being served on your menu as served form. So let's just say grape juice, you serve grape juice. But when I go through your receipts for that month and I look at your inventory, I don't see grape juice at all. We can take meals back if it's on there or you didn't purchase enough based on your menu as served form. If you are sharing receipts with another center, you can't share receipts with another center. If you're claiming adult meals, you can never claim adult meals. This is only a child nutrition program. It's only for children. You can feed adults, but you can't claim those meals. And the other thing is if you're a for-profit daycare, if you are for-profit, the only way you can participate in our program is if you have 25% of your kids enrolled, if they're free or reduced based on the application, or if you have at least 25% of your kids that swipe in. If you do not have at least 25% kids, you can't claim for that month. And I've had some that have teetered that 1 month they'll be 25%, 1 month they may be 10%. If you are under 25%, you cannot claim your meals. And that means if we come out and you were under that 25% and you're a for-profit daycare center, we have to take back your reimbursement that month because you were not supposed to claim. This is only for-profit daycare centers. If you're a non-profit daycare center, non-profit would be, again, our hospitals, government entities. anything like that, if you're nonprofit, that does not apply to you. You can have 0 kids that qualify. You're fine. This is only if you're a for-profit daycare. Again, the reason why for that is because to be on our program, it's really set up for kids that may, if you're for-profit, it's set up to be in areas where the kids may not have access to more nutritious meals. So it means it's maybe a lower income area. And so that way you can provide more nutritious meals. Other records, I'm going to go through this very quickly. That way we can go to lunch and then be set for our next one. So this will start on page 57. A lot of this you're going to know, but this is some information just to make you aware. We talked about forms earlier. If you are using a different form than what we currently have in our manual or what's in the resource library, you need to get approval from your consultant. And I will be honest, we have a lot of centers that use their own forms, and your forms are way better than ours, but we've had some people use their own form and it didn't work. And so we had to take back meals. And so to curb that, we need you to make sure that you can, if you want to use something different, contact your consultant and say, hey, can I use this form? This is what we're using. And if they say, yeah, that's fine, then use it. But don't, if they come out and you're using a different form, that form may not work and they could get, and it could cause an overclaim. So just a reminder, again, building for the future, you have to have building for the future and send it out every year. This is an example of building for the future. Make sure down here in this box, you put your daycare center information. Now, since the application and enrollment form is on one page, you may want to put this on the back of the page because you have to give this to your parents every year. It would save paper. And we know that that way, if we see it on the back of the application, you at least did give it to your parents, even though they're sending it back to you. If you are multi-sited, if you're a sponsor, then you are required to send this to our office. You would just send it to the person responsible for your application and agreement. So again, only if you're multi-sited or what we call a sponsor is a person who has multiple daycares or multiple sites under their agreement number. You have to send this to us. I don't know why you're the only ones. Fill that out, send us a copy, and we'll put that in your application. You are to have WIC information on available to families. A lot of people just put this on their bulletin board. If you do need more, you can contact WIC or you can go by WIC office and pick these up. I've even seen one that said eWIC, but anything that's WIC information you have to have available to parents. Again, if you run low, get more. I have some that will just like laminate it and stick it on their bulletin board. That's fine too. Just make sure you always have at least one on hand. Now, we have a new requirement for next year. This starts in October. And we got a lot of questions about this too whenever we started in the in-person. If you have a process that works good for you and you are doing inventory currently, talk to your consultant, because again, your consultant knows how your center is and your system might be fine. And what we do is not good for everybody, but we try to do something that we think will be good for the majority. Because we had some people that are like, well, I do my own system and this is why I do it the way I do. I don't use your form. I don't use this, but they already do inventory. I'm like, talk to your consultant because it sounds like what you're doing is perfect for your center. Talk to them and I'm sure they're going to be like, no, that works. That's fine. You are required now to do inventory. It will be on food and milk. You will list all unopened items that you have on hand at the end of the month. And this will again be for both food and milk. You have to complete this every month. And again, it needs to reflect what you did purchase. So this will be on page 63 of your training manual. This is an example of the inventory that we do have, that we have created for you. It's front and back. You may need more than one page, and we have the page up here. We have this in interactive, so it is online and interactive as well. So what you do is at the end of the month, what you have on hand that you have not opened up, you'll put all your meat alternates in one section. You'll put all your bread grains, your fruit and vegetable. Then on the back, there's one for milk and formula. There's one for infant food. There's one for condiments and extras. This is not required. This is just optional if you do want to list your condiments and your extras. And then we have your other for CACFP related supplies. So like your foil, stuff like that. We're doing this for several reasons, but one of the reasons that we are doing this is to really help you because like I told you, we can take back meals if you're sitting here saying, I serve grape juice, but I'm not seeing it on your receipts, but maybe you bought it last month and it would be on your inventory. Some other things with inventory, like down here is a good example. So they bought pineapple tidbits and they bought pineapple chunks. You have to list them both. If you buy it this one, they bought tidbits in a number 10 can and they had pineapple in a 15-ounce can. This is everything that, again, that they used that they did not open yet. So like this, maybe they went to the grocery store the day before the last day of the month. And this is what you had on hand that you had not opened up. Now up here, it has the date that someone did the inventory and who completed the form. But inventory is required. I am noticing the question about a brochure if it's on the website. I would say you have to also have one at your center as well, because if your parents do not go to your website, they may not know that you have WIC information. I think it's great that you have it on there, but I would also keep some at your site, because as a consultant, when I come out, I would have to see if you have something. So we've added some new forms to the manual. We've talked about a lot of them, but these are the page numbers they're located on. So if you go to your manual on page 64 is the new inventory form. The meal count worksheet, for one for children and one for infants. It's on page 49 through 51. We have the meal service change form. That's on page 75 of the manual. The claim revision form is on page 73. And the notification letter is on page 71. And something else that has been, this is why I was talking about, talk to your consultant about if you want to use the old meal count worksheet, is you are now required on the form, if it's a required form, you're required to state who filled out the form. And the reason for that being is we've had a lot of issues with, like, we have a question about something, who do we go talk to about it? So each required form now has a form completed by, and you have to list the name of the person who completed that form. It's not on ours that are not required. So like if you did the calculating servings form, or if you did a cycle menu, those are not required. So you don't have to put who completed it. These are only on forms who completed it by. And I'm in the middle of working on our online forms, but this will be on there. You don't have to sign it. You just have to type in print who is doing the form, just so we know who completed that form if we have questions. Quick little tidbits. After 60 days, we cannot pay a claim. You must keep your payment notices on file. And to find that is once we pay your claim, you go back to the claim view summary page. At the bottom, it will say print payment notice. And once it says print payment notice, that means money has been submitted to you. Anytime you need to revise your claim, you do have to fill out the claim revision form and send it to our office. We have to have an explanation of why you're revising the claim. And it's okay. We just have to have the documentation to show why you revised it. It happens all the time. You transpose numbers. You forgot to add your infants. You put your snack on your supper on snack. And then we also have a monthly record keeping checklist to help that all your records are completed. Before, like with our at-risk adult, and we took off anything, it's only for the one in the daycare center is only for daycare. So it's now be like, do I need this form? Do I not need this form? We have it cleaned up to where if you need it, we added training. So you remember to put your training in there, and we had put inventory on there. So it has been updated. It is, I have 11:35. We're going to go to lunch. We'll come back at 12:35 if that will work for you guys, give you guys an hour. I'll be around if you have any questions. I'm going to take a little bit of a lunch, but if you have any questions, I'll be around. Let's start back at 12:35. I'll put some music back on. It's going to be a little bit different than 80s, but I'll put some music on so we're still here. We're here for questions. We'll see you guys at 12:35, and you guys have a really good lunch. I will say too, if you're still around, if you do want to log off, we take off time for lunch, which is an hour. So if you do need to log off, you can log off and come back on. We do account for the time for lunch in the time that we equivalent, but if you want to stay on, I'm going to stay on. So you can do that. Nutrition, this is Kendra. I believe so. Which one are you needing? Okay, let me transfer. Okay, hold on just a second.